Welcome to the 6th deep dive edition of Baatcheat.
Hello again.
Yeah, these are our Wentley conversations, our cheat sheets, really, where we look at the world of electric vehicles and batteries. And we focus specifically on two huge markets, China and India.
Right. And it's a story we keep seeing, isn't it? You've got China, leading the charge, dominating in many ways right now. And then there's India with just this massive potential driven by, well, incredible demand on the horizon.
Exactly. So our mission today, as always, is to unpack the latest, most significant developments in these two places using the information we've gathered.
Okay.
Let's jump right in. China first. Things are moving so fast there.
Always. Okay, China. Well, the first thing, honestly, it always hits you the scale, just the sheer size of the market. The latest registration data really tells a story.
This is for what, late May, early June 2025?
Yeah, week 22, May 26th to June 1st. And you see all the familiar names, BYD, Tesla, Xiaomi, Li Auto, Ido, Leapmotor, XPeng, Deepal, Zeekr, NIO, and its sub-brands like Onvo and Firefly, Avatry.
Yeah.
It's crowded.
But BYD still seems to be out front, right?
Oh, absolutely. In that single week, week 22, BYD registered, get this, 59,800 vehicles.
Wow.
And what's interesting is that's up 12.2% just from the week before. Plus, their total for May was 382,476 units. That's up 15.3% compared to last May.
That's just relentless growth week on week, year on year. Incredible. How about some of the others? Tesla?
Okay, Tesla. They registered 13,040 in week 22. So it's a decent bump, 18.9% up from the previous week.
Right.
But, and this is key, it's actually down compared to the same week last year. So you can see the competitive heat is definitely being felt.
Interesting dynamic. And Xiaomi, the sort of new kid on the block making big noise.
Yeah, Xiaomi's climb continues. 7,800 registered, up 14.4% week on week. But the really eye-popping number is year on year, up 254.5%.
254%? Goodness.
Yeah, I mean, they're clearly in that hyper-growth phase, just ramping everything up.
Okay. And Li Auto, how are they doing?
Li Auto had a really strong week, 12,000 registered. That's up 14.6% from the week before, and up almost 43% year on year. The notes say it was actually their best week of 2025 so far. So maybe a bit of a comeback there.
Good for them. What about NIO Group? They have NIO Onvo.
Right, NIO Group. Their week 22 registrations were actually down a bit compared to the week prior. About 5,400 total, with the main NIO brand accounting for 3,000 of those.
Okay.
However, if you look at their total May deliveries for the whole group, that was 23,231 units, and that figure is up 13% year on year. So the weekly numbers bounce around, but the overall trend compared to last year is still upward for them.
That weekly volatility just underscores how intense that market is. And speaking of intense, you mentioned the price war earlier.
Yeah, this is a really big deal right now. It's become so fierce that the China Association of Automobile Manufacturers, CNGAT, has actually stepped in. They're urging companies to, cool it with the price cuts.
What triggered this intervention from CM?
Well, the reports point to BYD making some pretty significant price cuts on dozens of models back on May 23rd. And that apparently set off a chain reaction, with others like Chery and Leapmotor quickly following suit.
And what are CM's specific concerns about this? Why are they worried?
Based on the material we have, their view is that these kind of unregulated price wars just ramp up competition to an unhealthy level. It squeezes profit margins really hard.
Yeah.
And they're worried that could trickle down, maybe affecting product quality or after-sale service, ultimately hurting consumers. They also mentioned potential safety risks and even undermining the security of the whole supply chain. They use the phrase vicious cycle.
So it's a broader concern about the health and stability of the entire industry, not just individual company profits.
Exactly. It's about avoiding a race to the bottom that could damage the foundations.
Makes sense. Okay, moving beyond sales figures and pricing drama, China's also pushing hard on the infrastructure side, right? Charging and swapping.
Absolutely. And some of this is really cutting edge. Take BYD's plan for ultra-fast charging. It's incredibly ambitious. They're partnering with Xiaoju Charging and Longshine.
Okay.
The plan is to build 15,000 chargers, 10,000 with Xiaoju, 5,000 with Longshine. And these chargers have a power output of up to 1 megawatt.
1 megawatt? That sounds like a lot. What does that mean for drivers?
It means speed. Serious speed. The claim is these chargers can add 400 kilometers of range in just 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Just to give you some context, Tesla's newest V4 superchargers peak at around 500 kilowatts. So BYD is talking about potentially doubling that kind of speed.
That really tackles the whole charging time issue head on. Is this a brand new initiative for BYD?
Not entirely.
Yeah.
They've actually got a head start. They already have over 500 of these 1 megawatt stations up and running across more than 200 cities.
Ah, okay.
And crucially, their newer EVs, like the Han L and the Tang L, are built to actually handle that level of power. So the cars and the chargers are developing together.
That ecosystem approach is smart. And then there's the other angle for quick turnarounds, battery swapping. CATL is active there.
Very active,
Love that.
especially in commercial fleets. They just started deliveries of 1,000 Chang'an Ocean 520 sedans. These are specifically designed for CATL's battery swap system, the Chaco Seb that's swapping electric block.
Right.
And these are going into service as taxis in Chongqing.
And why is this particular deployment significant?
Well, the thinking is it marks a move towards large-scale adoption of this standardized swap model, particularly in the mobility sector like ride-hailing and taxis. CATL isn't stopping there. They already have 34 swap stations in Chongqing and are aiming for 1,000 stations across 31 cities by the end of 2025.
That's rapid expansion. And the benefit for, say, a taxi driver.
Then it's speed and convenience.
Yeah.
You pull in, swap out the depleted battery for a fully charged one, good for 500 kilometers of range, and you're out in under 2 minutes.
Under 2 minutes.
Yeah. The material suggests this could save drivers over 2 hours of charging time per day. For someone whose car is their livelihood, that's a massive difference in uptime and potential earnings.
2 hours a day is huge. Okay, let's shift from powering the car to the batteries themselves. Are we seeing movement beyond standard lithium-ion in China?
We are, especially in energy storage applications. There's news about China's first large-scale lithium-sodium hybrid energy storage station. It's up and running in Yunnan province, operated by China Southern Power Grid.
Lithium-sodium hybrid. Interesting. What can it do?
It's a big one. It can store up to 800,000 kilowatt hours of electricity daily. Enough, they say, to power around 270,000 homes.
Wow.
And while it's called hybrid, the focus seems to be on the sodium-ion part. It uses new high-capacity sodium-ion batteries from a company called Haina Battery, which apparently have a faster response speed than other sodium-ion types out there.
And what's the main appeal of sodium-ion, especially for grid storage?
Cost and availability, mainly. Sodium is just way more abundant and easier to get than lithium, which brings the cost down significantly. While maybe not as energy-dense as lithium-ion for cars yet, they're proving really effective for these large stationary storage systems.
Right.
The material does mention some EVs are starting to use them too, so maybe we'll see more of that down the road. But for now, energy storage seems to be the main play.
Interesting to see these different chemistries finding their niches. And globally, in terms of who's making these EV batteries, the picture hasn't changed much.
Not really, no. Looking at the data for the first 4 months of 2025, CATL is still way out in front globally, with about 38.1% market share for EV batteries.
Right.
And BYD is solidly in second place with 17.3%. So between those two Chinese giants, you're looking at well over half the entire global market.
That dominance is quite something. Okay, let's talk software. That's becoming just as important as the hardware. NIO had a recent update.
Yeah, they just rolled out the first version of their NIO World Model, or NWM, system update. This is for their assisted driving features. It's about making the car understand its surroundings better.
What kind of safety improvements does it bring?
A couple of notable ones mentioned. First, driver incapacitation detection. So if the system thinks the driver isn't responsive, it can actually take over, pull the car safely to the roadside, turn on the hazards, and even call for help.
That sounds potentially life-saving.
Could be. The other one is improved universal obstacle recognition, basically making the car better at spotting things like barriers, guardrails, even curbs, especially when turning or changing lanes.
Okay, practical safety stuff. Anything novel, maybe around parking?
Yes, actually. There's a parking space memory feature, which sounds convenient. But the really interesting bit is what they call production-ready autonomous parking garage navigation.
Autonomous parking garage navigation.
Yeah, using natural language commands and visual understanding. The claim is it doesn't need pre-mapped routes or memorized paths inside a garage. You tell it what to do, it sees the environment, and it can navigate complex parking structures to find a spot or the exit on its own.
That sounds very advanced. Navigating a complex garage without prior maps is a big step.
It really highlights the software capabilities these newer players are focusing on.
And all this innovation, the scale, the software focus from Chinese brands, it must put incredible pressure on older legacy automakers trying to compete there.
It absolutely does. And we're seeing fallout. For instance, there are reports that Chevrolet is actually preparing to leave the Chinese market.
Chevrolet leaving China, that's a huge global name. What happened?
Well, the story is one of declining sales for 6 years straight, with really sharp drops recently in 2024 and so far in 2025.
Why the struggle?
The main reason cited is just not adapting fast enough to the EV shift. They've been too reliant on traditional combustion engine cars. Apparently, only about 5% of their sales were battery EVs. Add in some reported issues with delayed projects and dealership problems.
Right.
And they just couldn't keep pace with the speed and focus of the domestic Chinese EV makers.
That's a stark contrast, isn't it? Chevrolet potentially leaving while we're talking about megawatt charging and autonomous garage parking from others. Okay, let's pivot. Time to shift our focus to India.
All right, India. What's really interesting there is seeing the competition heat up within specific segments, showing different strategies at play. The electric two-wheeler market is a great example. We've got some numbers comparing Ather Energy and Ola Electric.
Okay, the two big names in electric scooters there, what do the numbers show for, say, the last quarter of their fiscal year 2025?
It's quite revealing. Ather Energy generated 676 crore rupees in operating revenue in that quarter.
Right.
Now, what's interesting is that this was actually more than Ola Electric, who brought in 611 crore rupees. Either beat them by 65 crore rupees.
Huh. But isn't Ola usually seen as the one selling more units?
Exactly, and that's the fascinating part. Ather achieved that higher revenue even though they sold fewer vehicles. Ather sold about 47,500 units,
Okay.
while Ola Electric sold around 60,000 units. So Ather sold roughly 1.5 times fewer scooters, but made more money.
How does that work? How did Ather pull that off?
Two main things seem to be at play, based on the material. First, Ather's average selling price per scooter was quite a bit higher, around 1,042,000 rupees, compared to Ola's 1,001,000 rupees.
Find some more premium positioning.
Seems like it. And second, Ather's financial losses were way lower, about 234 crore rupees for Ather versus a much bigger loss of 862 crore rupees for Ola Electric in the same period. So higher price point and seemingly much better cost control or efficiency.
That combination makes sense for better financial results despite lower volume. Did the dealership network play a role?
That's another interesting difference. Ather apparently had just over 400 dealerships at the time. Ola Electric had a much, much larger network, over 4,000.
Wow, big difference.
Yeah. So if you do the math, Ather's model generated significantly higher average revenue per dealership. It suggests maybe a more targeted, efficient approach, or perhaps they're capturing a more valuable customer base through fewer, possibly better performing outlets. It really shows success in India isn't just about volume. The business model matters hugely.
Definitely. A great example of different strategies playing out. Now, moving beyond two-wheelers, India is also seeing growth in the electric car market with significant new launches, right?
Absolutely. A big one recently was the launch of the Tata Harrier electric vehicle. That happened on June 3rd, 2025. It's a pretty important step, especially coming from Tata, a major domestic player.
The Harrier EV, what are the key specs on that?
Okay, so it's built on Tata's own Actide A-Z-BAT platform. It offers two battery options. There's a 65 kilowatt-hour version starting at 21.4 lakh rupees ex-showroom.
And the bigger battery?
That's a 75 kilowatt-hour pack. For that one, they're claiming a range of 627 kilometers based on the Indian ARAI test cycle. The price for that top version is estimated to go up to around 30 lakh rupees.
627-kilometer ARAI range is pretty substantial. What about powertrain options?
It'll come in both rear-wheel drive and quad-wheel drive setups. Performance seems decent for an SUV this size. They claim 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 6.3 seconds.
And inside, what kind of features are we looking at?
It sounds quite well equipped. It's got a big 36.9 centimeter Neo-QLED display, Dolby Atmos sound, so aiming for a premium feel. It also includes Level 2 ADS Advanced Driver Assistance Systems.
Okay, so lane keeping assist, adaptive cruise control, that sort of thing.
Exactly. The kind of assist useful for highway driving, though you still need to pay attention, of course.
Of course. Anything else stand out, maybe about the battery warranty?
Yes, actually, this is quite a headline feature. They're offering a lifetime battery warranty for the first owner, with unlimited kilometers.
Lifetime battery warranty, unlimited kilometers, that's bold.
It really is. A huge show of confidence in their battery tech.
Yeah.
It also has useful features like vehicle-to-load V2L, so you can power appliances from the car.
Right.
And vehicle-to-vehicle, or V2V charging, meaning it can share its charge with another EV.
Very handy features. When can people book it?
Bookings are set to open on July 2nd, 2025. It's going to be competing against other electric SUVs like the Mahindra XEV90, the MGZS EV, and also the BYD Atto 3 in that segment.
So putting it all together from this deep dive,
Yeah.
we're seeing two very different but equally dynamic stories unfolding.
Yeah, I think that's fair. China is just relentlessly pushing battery scale, obviously, but also things like that megawatt charging, exploring different battery types like sodium ion for storage, really advanced software features. But at the same time, they're dealing with the fallout of that intense internal price competition. It's forcing adjustments.
Right. And then India. It's clearly earlier on the EV curve compared to China, but the potential is undeniable. We see smart strategies emerging, like AFR, showing you don't just need massive volume to succeed financially in certain segments.
Exactly. And you have major domestic players like Tata bringing genuinely competitive, feature-packed EVs like the Harrier EV to market. It really demonstrates India's growing capability and the increasing options available to consumers there. The potential is definitely crystallizing.
Both markets just evolving incredibly fast, each with its own drivers and challenges.
Which sort of leads us to a final thought, maybe something for you, our listeners, to chew on.
Yeah.
With all this rapid innovation we're seeing in charging, in battery chemistry, in vehicle software, across both China and India, how do you think these advancements will fundamentally change the actual experience of owning and using an EV, say, in the next, 3 to 5 years? Will things like range anxiety or charging time just fade away as concerns? Will the battery itself become almost invisible to the user experience? What new things become possible when cars are this connected, this fast charging, maybe even swapping batteries in minutes?
That's a great question. How different will that daily reality feel? Lots to think about there. Okay, that wraps up this deep dive.
We really hope this look at the latest from China and India gave you some useful takeaways.
Thank you so much for joining us for this Baatcheat conversation. As always, we love getting your feedback, your questions. Let us know what you thought about today's discussion.
Definitely. And we'll be back next week with another deep dive.
See you then.